Imagine a $175 billion shield, not on the ground but in space, promising to detect and intercept some of the fastest, deadliest missiles ever built. Critics warn the true cost could spiral far higher, and timelines and feasibility remain fiercely debated. Why is the United States suddenly racing to reinvent its entire missile defense, and can even this level of ambition match threats moving at over 4,000 miles per hour? The answer starts with the new era of hypersonic weapons, where every second counts and old playbooks are already obsolete. Hypersonic glide vehicles have upended the logic of missile defense. Traveling at speeds that start at Mach 5, more than a mile every second, and in some cases exceeding Mach 20, these weapons close the distance between launch and impact in a matter of minutes. Russian avant-garde tests have reached velocities near 9 kilometers per second. China's DF-ZF, mounted on the DF-17 missile, regularly demonstrates Mach 10 in flight. But it is not just raw speed that shatters old assumptions. Hypersonic weapons maneuver along unpredictable paths, skipping and weaving through the upper atmosphere. Some glide vehicles can shift laterally by more than 200 kilometers during flight, pulling S-turns and altitude changes that defeat the straight-line tracking of legacy radar. Traditional missile defense systems were built for predictable arcs, ballistic paths that could be tracked and targeted in the middle of their journey. Hypersonic threats break that model entirely. Their low flight altitudes, sometimes just 30 to 60 kilometers above ground, hide them from ground radars until the last moments. At Mach 10, a hypersonic glide vehicle can cover 1,000 kilometers in 5 minutes. Cross-range maneuvers mean that even if a defender knows the launch point, the final target remains a mystery until seconds before impact. This shrinking window leaves little time for detection, decision, and response. The entire engagement cycle, spotting a launch, confirming a threat, and launching an interceptor, can be compressed to less than 2 minutes. Maneuvering at hypersonic speeds, these weapons can bypass fixed defenses and force a complete rethink of how and where to watch for danger. The challenge is clear: late-phase defense is no longer enough. Defending against hypersonic missiles now means watching the entire globe all the time. The old method, waiting for a blip on a radar screen near the end of a missile's flight, no longer works. Today's threats can launch from almost anywhere, fly unpredictable routes, and vanish below radar horizons until the very last seconds. That is why military planners are pushing for persistent sensing, a network that never blinks, tracking every stage of a missile's journey, from the moment engines ignite to the instant before impact. This approach is called continuous custody. It is not just about spotting a launch, but maintaining an unbroken chain of detection as a missile arcs, glides, or maneuvers across continents. To achieve this, sensors cannot be limited to a handful of fixed sites. Instead, they must be distributed on the ground, in the air, and especially in space. The requirement is clear: global coverage with eyes always open, no matter the weather, time of day, or location. Policy has shifted to match these realities. The Missile Defense Agency and the U.S. Space Force have both described the need for left-of-launch detection, catching threats before or as soon as they leave the ground, not just after they appear on radar. This means integrating infrared sensors in orbit, advanced radars on land, and networks that can share data instantly across thousands of miles. Only by fusing these layers can defenders hope to keep pace with weapons that cross oceans in minutes and change course without warning. The next step is building an architecture where ground and space work as a single nervous system, ready to respond at a moment's notice. At the heart of America's missile defense lies a network of ground-based radars and interceptors already operating around the clock. Alaska's Long-Range Discrimination Radar, called LRDR, stands as the most advanced of these assets. Built at Clear Space Force Station, LRDR became operational in 2023, designed to track and identify incoming threats with unprecedented precision. Its phased array panels sweep the skies for objects thousands of miles away, distinguishing real warheads from decoys in the chaos of an attack. This level of discrimination is essential for any chance at intercepting modern missiles, especially as adversaries deploy countermeasures to confuse defenders. RDR does not work alone. It feeds data into the broader ground-based mid-course defense ecosystem, a network that includes interceptor silos at Fort Greely, Alaska, and Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. These interceptors are tasked with launching at incoming missiles during their mid-course phase, when the warhead is coasting through space, but before it begins its final dive toward the target. The current system is designed to counter limited attacks, relying on a handful of interceptors and a network of supporting radars across North America and the Pacific. Each launch is guided by real-time data relayed from sensors like LRDR, which must distinguish hostile missiles from harmless debris or decoys in seconds. Upgrades are underway across the ground layer. Sentinel A4 radars are rolling out to supplement existing coverage, improving detection of cruise missiles and drones that might slip under older systems. The Missile Defense Agency's Program Office describes this as a system of systems, with each sensor and interceptor playing a specialized role. Today, the backbone is operational, but its limits are clear. Ground-based radars can only see so far, and their coverage is shaped by the curve of the Earth. Even with the latest upgrades, there are gaps, especially against threats that fly low and fast or maneuver in ways that legacy systems struggle to predict. This tangible network of radars and interceptors forms the foundation for any future expansion. LRDR and its supporting systems deliver real-world capability, not just theory. Yet the demands of hypersonic and maneuvering threats expose the need for a new layer, one that reaches beyond the horizon and keeps watch from above. That is where the next phase of missile defense begins to take shape. The next layer is orbital. Instead of relying on a handful of satellites in high orbit, the concept calls for a dense constellation in low Earth orbit. This network would number in the hundreds, or in some proposals, thousands, each equipped with advanced sensors designed to track missiles from their earliest moments of flight. Unlike ground-based radars, these satellites would remain above the horizon for nearly every point on the globe, providing continuous custody over potential launch sites and threat corridors. The vision is not a few high-value assets, but a swarm spread across multiple orbital planes. Each satellite would scan for the telltale signatures of missile launches, infrared plumes, rapid movement, and heat spikes, and relay that data in real time to ground stations and command centers. As a missile rises, maneuvers, or tries to disappear below radar, the constellation hands off tracking from one satellite to the next, maintaining an unbroken chain of detection. This handoff approach aims to close the gaps that hypersonic and maneuvering threats exploit, making it possible to follow their path from the instant engines ignite to the moment they threaten a target. The technical ambition is sweeping. Persistent global coverage means satellites must be close enough together to avoid blind spots, yet distributed widely enough to survive attacks or failures. Proposals reference the Space Development Agency's Tranche 3 plans, which involve rapid launches and mass production to keep the network refreshed and resilient. Each new satellite adds to the mesh, strengthening the system's ability to track multiple threats at once and resist jamming and cyber intrusion. At present, this orbital layer remains in the proposed or early pilot stage. The Missile Defense Agency and Space Force have funded demonstration satellites and sensor payloads, but a full-scale operational network is still years away. The cost and complexity of deploying, maintaining, and integrating such a vast constellation are the subject of intense debate. Yet the logic is clear. Only by watching the world from above all the time can defenders hope to match the speed and unpredictability of the next generation of missile threats. Mass to orbit has always been the bottleneck in any plan to build a true space-based defense layer. For decades, the cost and cadence of launches forced military planners to think in terms of a handful of high-value satellites, each one a billion-dollar asset, and each launch a major event. That equation has changed. The rise of commercial heavy-lift rockets, led by SpaceX, has made it possible to imagine sending hundreds or even thousands of satellites into low Earth orbit in a single year. Starship's projected payload capacity, more than 100 metric tons to orbit per launch, redefines what is possible for national security space missions. The U.S. government has already awarded SpaceX dozens of contracts for classified and unclassified launches, including payloads for the Space Development Agency Tranche 1 and Tranche 2 constellations. Starshield, SpaceX's national security satellite platform, is designed for rapid deployment and flexible mission profiles, and it has fueled speculation that SpaceX is widely discussed as a likely contractor for any future proliferated space layer. No official documents confirm a direct link to Golden Dome, yet SpaceX executives have described their Starshield work as providing sensor and integration prototypes for government customers. Launch cadence now rivals that of commercial air cargo. In 2025 alone, SpaceX completed more than 90 orbital launches, many carrying batches of government payloads. This pace allows for regular replenishment and upgrades, reducing the risk that a single failure or attack could cripple the entire network. The economics of mass production and rapid launch have shifted the conversation from whether a space shield is possible to how quickly it can be built and who will deliver the hardware. The next challenge moves beyond launch into the reality of sustaining and integration of these systems once they reach orbit and the ground. Winter in Alaska does not just challenge people, it tests the limits of hardware and logistics in ways that rarely make it into glossy project proposals. For engineers and technicians responsible for keeping missile defense systems running near the Arctic Circle, the job is a constant battle with the environment. Sub-zero temperatures, permafrost, and months of darkness turn even routine maintenance into a high-stakes operation. Delivering a single replacement part can take half a year. Lead times can stretch to 180 days or more, with supply flights delayed by storms or grounded by ice. Lead times matter. When a system goes offline, there is no quick fix. Outage rates at far north sites run up to 25% higher than those at bases in the lower 48 states, and every hour lost chips away at the network's promise of constant vigilance. A former systems engineer who spent years at a remote radar site says they built for 99% uptime. But even with redundancies, the weather wins more often than people expect. One storm can knock out power, freeze diesel lines, and strand repair crews for days. The cost of doing business in this environment is not just higher, it is multiplied. Government Accountability Office and Department of Defense data show that construction and operations in Alaska often run 2 to 2.5 times as expensive as comparable projects elsewhere. Cost pressures are real. Everything from concrete to electronics faces a brutal premium, and the price of keeping personnel on site, skilled, well-paid, and willing to stay through the winter drives costs up even further. For missile defense planners, these facts are more than a line item. They are a reminder that sustaining a shield at the edge of the world means budgeting for the unexpected, and that every layer added to the system brings new risks of delay, downtime, and escalation in both cost and complexity. Every layer of missile defense, no matter how advanced, relies on more than hardware in silos or satellites in orbit. The real test is integration, fusing thousands of data streams, protocols, and decision points into a single, seamless response loop. In the Golden Dome concept, that means connecting ground-based radars like the Long-Range Discrimination Radar, LRDR, with a proliferated constellation of satellites, each feeding real-time tracking data into a central nervous system. That system must not only see a threat, but also decide within seconds what to do about it. The process begins with sensors. LRDR provides high-precision tracking and discrimination from the ground, while space-based platforms such as HBTSS and the Space Development Agency tracking layer sweep the globe for the earliest signs of a launch. These sensors operate on different principles: radio frequency on the ground, infrared and optical in space, each with its own strengths and blind spots. The challenge is to combine their inputs into a single fire control quality track that can guide an interceptor to a moving target traveling at thousands of kilometers per hour. Data must move faster than the missile itself. Optical inter-satellite links carry information between satellites at the speed of light, bypassing terrestrial bottlenecks. But as data flows from orbit to ground, it hits a patchwork of protocols, encryption standards, and legacy systems. Every handoff introduces risk, delays in decryption, bandwidth mismatches, or cyber vulnerabilities. Even a single dropped packet can mean the difference between a successful intercept and a missed opportunity. At the core sits the command and control system, C2BMC, tasked with fusing inputs, filtering out noise, and presenting operators with actionable options. Artificial intelligence helps in triage, but human decision cycles still add precious seconds. For hypersonic threats where the window for action may be under a minute, these margins are razor thin. No public test has demonstrated end-to-end latency that meets the demands of a real-world attack. Engineers call the fusion problem the true bottleneck, overshadowing even the difficulty of launching hardware into space. Each new sensor or interceptor multiplies the number of connections and compounds the risk of failure. Integration is not a single hurdle. It is a moving target shaped by evolving threats, new technologies, and institutional boundaries. Until the fusion bottleneck is solved, the promise of a seamless global missile shield remains just out of reach. The real mega project is integration. Official cost projections for a space-based missile shield have become a battleground of numbers and assumptions. The Trump administration's figure of $175 billion, widely cited in headlines, covers only the initial development and deployment phases. The Congressional Budget Office paints a more complicated picture. For a system focused solely on deterring a limited North Korean missile threat, the Congressional Budget Office projects costs between $161 billion and $542 billion over 20 years, already more than double the headline number, even before expanding the mission. Defending against peer adversaries like China or Russia would require a much larger constellation of interceptors and sensors, sending costs well beyond these upper bounds. Independent think tanks and oversight bodies warn that a true all-threat shield scaled to counter simultaneous attacks from multiple adversaries could carry a price tag of $1.1 trillion to $3.6 trillion over 2 decades. Those estimates include not just launch and build-out, but the relentless costs of maintaining, replacing, and upgrading thousands of satellites and ground systems. The Congressional Budget Office notes that even optimistic assumptions about falling launch costs cannot contain the total. Historical patterns in missile defense, where programs like Ground-Based Mid-Course Defense and SBIRS have doubled or tripled in cost, add to the skepticism. Oversight agencies such as the Government Accountability Office and the Congressional Research Service point to integration and sustainment as major drivers of escalation. Each new layer, whether orbital, terrestrial, or digital, multiplies the complexity in the bill. Life cycle costs, logistics in remote environments, and the need for constant upgrades drive the real total far beyond initial projections. Critics argue that as the scope expands, so does the risk of runaway spending with no guarantee of technical success. Strategic analysts raise another set of concerns. Building a shield on this scale could disrupt global stability, fuel arms races, and prompt adversaries to develop new countermeasures or anti-satellite weapons. The specter of weaponizing space hangs over the debate. While the Space Force and the Missile Defense Agency have moved into prototyping elements of a space layer, the path to an operational, globally integrated shield remains uncertain. The obstacles are not only physics and engineering, but the realities of cost, oversight, and international reaction. In short, the numbers are contested, the timeline is disputed, and the details remain limited. The high stakes make this more than a technical program. It is a political and strategic choice about priorities, risks, and resources. Right now, billions flow into the promise of networked defense. But the true test is not just hardware, it is whether integration can keep pace with the threats. As hypersonic weapons redefine speed and unpredictability, every delay carries risk. The race is not about space, it is about time. How we choose to defend could shape the future of conflict itself. What is your take, shield or dream? Leave your thoughts below.